Coming to you from rugby's greatest fortress, New Zealand's national stadium, Eden Park, is the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Kia ora and welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. So much great rugby to talk this week. We're going to start this week with a little bit of chat about the All Blacks attack coach. Now, we've heard about Tana Umaga being approached on defence. We also know there's been huge debate about the fact that we can't get Tony Brown. But there are lots of options around. We're going to deep dive into who they are, what they do, and how they could work with Dave Rennie. Of course, plenty of Super Rugby chat as well, and a little bit of a preview towards our interview with Joel Lamb, the new Moana Pacifica sensation at halfback, who's got a different way of making it into Super Rugby. So we'll have him as well. And if you want to catch some of your questions, we've got the ATHLETECH questions of the week. We'll get into everything that you want to know about rugby. And you can catch all of the Aotearoa Rugby Pod content on @Aotearoa Rugby Pod official channels, YouTube, social media, and audio pod. You can catch us on stuff.co.nz, New Zealand's biggest news website. Get us on Rugby Pass, where they have incredible stats as well. Next to me, James Parsons, who is pretty pumped about the Blues.
Well, I tell you what, there were some nervous times in my lounge last night, coming back after the Moana Pacifica game. I was full of confidence, but there was definitely a lot of desperation D in that first half that made it worthwhile, but I was out of the chair for that bonus point. That was absolutely crucial, just to keep the pressure on the Canes at the top there.
Yeah, that was a hell of a comeback. I didn't necessarily see coming because the Waratahs looked like they were going to score at any moment throughout the entire first half.
That first half, you could just see Dan McKellar every time. He was just like, why is this happening to me? He just didn't want to be there. He was so frustrated. For what they created, they should have come away with more points. But I was just super impressed with the desperation defence. You saw that one where Cody Vaya came across, his shoulder pops out the ball. Like they just never, ever gave in. And I also think they used something that was a flaw of theirs in the attacking 22 really well, in terms of absorbing that ball carrier and taking them over, which I think those dropouts really counted.
Yeah, Beauden Barrett did that particularly well.
Great.
Bryn Hall joining us from Japan. Brenna, that was a hell of a performance from the Blues. The Crusaders also looked a lot better this week.
Yeah, they did. Look, I think considering that, it could have possibly seen as a little bit of a bogey kind of match. I think with Moana Pacifica, especially last year. But yeah, I think the second half was a big performance for them. So yeah, I think Rob Penny, I think if you look at in terms of the start of the season, there's a few probably games that they weren't able to get, but I think to be able to go 2 from 2 in the last 2 games, and especially with the bonus point Drip touched on with the Blues being able to get a bonus point in the last minute, but I think being able to have a bonus point win gets them on the trajectory, I think, to be able to get in that top 6 and hopefully now can be in a little bit of rhythm, being a little bit one-eyed, but you've been a little bit more rhythm than we probably saw in the first part of the year.
The factory's still in operation, me old mate. I tell you what, Cooper Grant, Curtis McDonald, they look like real superstars of the future. But it also just showed, man, their big players stepped up. All Blacks in the midfield and McLeod and Ennor, they really supported Grant. Will Jordan was just a freak, and his connection with Sevu Reece, like they really led a lot of the attacking prowess out of their half. And I mean, that's no surprise. They do lead the comp in most of those stats in terms of metres run, I suppose line breaks, defenders beaten, but they're high in turnovers. What they had last night, so they had very limited turnovers, and that allowed them to show that ruthless edge. And it just shows it's still a 23-man game. The impact of Leicester was massive. He really, like Moana started that second half really well, but a little bit of punch from Leicester getting out of that 22 and just some freakish ability with ball in hand. Admittedly, no one really wanted to tackle him. I mean, I wouldn't be in a hurry to get in front of him either. But he was super impressive.
Let's start there then, because when I saw him do that, and then you see AJ Lamb as well, bumping on people left, right, and centre. Tava Nawai just banging in and around bodies, brother. Who is the person you would least like to run at you? Who is the person you do not want to tackle?
I'm not playing obviously Super Rugby right now, and Artie Sevilla would be a big one for that, considering that we've had a few highlights on this. We had a few highlights on the old reel in this forum. So look, I think honestly Leicester, he's a pretty tough customer when it comes to tackling. I think being able to train with him a few times, his ability to be able to just, I think it's the initial like bump. You would have thought, remember George Moala, he was a big guy in terms of like that first bump, but then him being able to like go over the top of you in that second kind of effort. I think Leicester, he's a big one, but I think Caleb Clark, he would also be another one for me personally. I think when he's got his he's all go. I think it's a little bit difficult to get Caleb Clark, but I have Leicester. He'd be probably my top one, considering that Ali Sabir now isn't there.
I am going nowhere near a Safa more. He just sits on that edge, and I just feel for every winger in the comp. Like,
Yeah.
He is just, because I think, like in the close quarter stuff, where mostly that's where you defend as a hooker, like it's sort of 5 meters, but when you give a Safa 20, and he's so low to the ground. I think Tavatava Nawai is a little bit in that era as well. It just, I suppose, there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
Absolutely nowhere to hide.
He is tough to stop. But AJ Lamb, I'm in the fan club, but he's the same. Like, he just bangs bodies. Yeah.
Walton just got left. Oh, yeah. I mean, and he's done it a hell of a lot since transitioning into midfield, which people don't really understand how quick that transition. Like, he was sort of a makeshift midfielder through injury 2 or 3 years ago, and now he's just made it his own, and you know, and getting the rewards with a good contract overseas, and I'm sure they'll be looking forward to seeing more of that.
Yeah, he's a hell of a player. Right, let's get into our first topic of the evening. All Blacks assistant coaches. Now, the attack coach is probably the interesting one. You know, Tony Brown was so much chat. He's obviously not available. He's at the Springboks. Who is the right person to structure the All Blacks attack in the way that Dave Rennie would want it structured?
It's a good question, and I suppose this came from our, interaction via WhatsApp over the weekend. I was just watching the Chiefs, and I just thought every time off strike plays, they either will score or they will score in the second or third phase. If you look at, I suppose if we start with strike plays, Coombs Fabling's first try, just the use of Damian McKenzie, and then the ball out the back of Damian to Nano Satoru, and then it's just catch pass, because they're utilising the threat that everyone's worried about to get to the outside and then to score. And then later on in the piece, they go to Damian, and then he creates a gap. I just feel, if you look at the success of the Chiefs over a long period of time, Roger Randle's been there as their attack coach, and he's just super impressive of always evolving their game. And then and to be fair, this is probably fitting to their players. If you look at these stats of the last few years with Nano Satoru, with Sean Stevenson, with Damian McKenzie, but in terms of fitting Dave Rennie's mould, it's either a kick return or turnover. They are ruthless. Like, I think over the last 3 years, they've scored 45% from turnover ball. And yes, I know it suits the players, and you can't say it's all the coach, but you've got to put systems around that actually make sense to allow them to take advantage of it. And if you look at Dave Rennie and his successful tenure with the Chiefs, his continued success with Kobe, a lot of it again is from turnover ball. He pounces like Wayne Smith did. He was sort of the one to first start this idea of the click attack or the turnover attack. And I feel like Roger just has a really, really good grasp on it with the Chiefs.
Brenna, the stats suggest that Roger Randle has done a tremendous job of developing the Chiefs attack. When he took over in 2020, they were scoring just 19 points a game. Now they're scoring 32 points a game. They've developed a lot.
You know, I think I've probably been pretty lucky when I was with New Zealand Māoris, been able to, I guess, get a little bit of a intel of what he kind of thinks. And I think when it comes to strike plays, whether it's through line out, scrum attack, he's very, very hungry, I think, to be able to try and beat the attack, beat the defence, which I think is a really important element when it comes to coaching, wanting to be able to do that. But I think, you know, we've talked a lot around the Chiefs attack with Damian McKenzie, or their phase play shape, being able to have the down runners, the animation of what they do have. He is really a big part of that. So, yeah, I think what you said, Ross, was at 19 points when, you know, he came into the job, now 32 points. And, you know, I think the way that they do attack, I think Coombs Favling, I think you even see on the weekend that they're able to go wide to wide, which I think, you know, in the international game, are you able to do that? You know, I'm not too sure, but I think with the numbers that have been kind of said, that you did said, with 32 points, I think he definitely is one person. If you're talking around attack and being able to, I guess, get that kind of going, he would be definitely one person to, I guess, be in the running.
Well, you look at it, they've made the final, but yes, they've had the hiccup. Sorry to bring it up. Don't worry, I went through years of it. I think they've been the form team, I think, attacking wise for a number of years, and that's why they've always been at the pointy end. But the biggest change is, you know, in 2020 they're at 25% turnover counter scoring. Now they're at 45%. That is a different mindset that's taken, you know, time to build, but clearly it has to be the consistent, which is Roger Randle.
He started just after Rennie left, so there hasn't been any crossover there. Obviously, relationships are massive parts of the coaches that come in, isn't it? Like, and you tend to see they bring their people along with them. So even though he's a Chiefs man, he's not a Rennie man just yet. So it'll be interesting to see whether there is anything there.
Everyone is probably expecting it to be the Blair, the assistant that he's had with him for a number of years, and you do get the feeling he's a loyal man, but also he doesn't want an echo chamber, so he knows who questions him, who challenges him, so that for the coaching group as a whole, they make the right decision for the team. But I just feel like on Friday night, I was just sitting there just going, man, like, I don't think Roger Randle gets enough praise for how well he has this Chiefs team going on a consistent basis, no matter who the head coach is.
Yeah. Brenner, Mike Blair over at Corbair, who's the former Scotland international, 85 caps for Scotland. He coached at Glasgow with Rennie. He went on to become the Edinburgh head coach, but walked away because he wanted to be more hands-on. He didn't want to deal with all the management administrative stuff. He wanted to be a hands-on coach who dealt with strategy and players. That's the kind of thing you want to hear about one of your assistant coaches, right? But what have you seen from the way that they attack in the Japanese league that impresses you about the way that Mike Blair goes about his business?
What they really do really well, it's the attention to detail that he does with those players. Brendan Gatland is there. You've got Antoine Brown, you've got Artie Severe, those boys that have been able to play there. Brody Retallick, who's the top try scorer. But he's very, very good at around the players that he does have. He brings the best strengths out of them, which I think is a really important thing. I think with the All Blacks, there's a lot of quality with the players that we do have. We talked about Geordie Barrett when he went to Leinster. He was able to perform at a very, very high level. And we always I talked about how can we get the best of Geordie Barrett in the All Black jersey. If you look at probably Mike Blair and how he coaches that Corbair team, those players who they have there and their skill set, they're very, very good, and he's able to bring the best out of them. So, look, I know that's the Japan level. It's not international, but what I do enjoy seeing Mike Blair and that players at Corbair, very, very good at around the players that he does have. He brings out their attributes and what they do very, very well. So if he's given the job with the All Blacks, I think it's a very, very good trait for a coach to be able to bring the attributes that the players do very, very well.
The reason why he stayed with Reading is he gets a lot of tries from turnover and counter, but kick return, I think those are all the same. Do you know what I mean? Because it's an opportunity when, defences aren't organised. I suppose a kick return, they're a little bit more organised, but you can be creative in terms of creating holes or opportunities of getting to certain parts of the field. So again, he's another coach that I feel attack is, when you see a good attack to me is you see a line break and you see 14 other guys accelerate. Because they're like, this is, if I don't do this, if I don't get in the picture, as they call it, in terms of the frame, if you go to wide angle, tight angle, how many jerseys of ours are in there versus the opposition, you won't be on the field. And that, when you watch the archive footage and you watch Corbair, which I think we have to put it, it is Japanese top league and I know it's improving and I'm not saying Super's better or anything, but the points scored are a lot higher. But I do think the mindset, like honestly, when you watch Corbair, every player just is like bang, like there's a line break, there's a turnover, it's like everyone's on edge. Whereas the teams that I think struggle, you just see it's like, oh, let's just secure the ball and maybe get the caterpillar and then let's kick. Whereas that's not the mindset of Blair. He clearly is all out attack.
Also, when you bring in a new coach, you want to see change, but you want to see effective change, right? Like, there's no point of changing for change's sake. And if you look at the stats and the way that Corbair's changed, they went from 60% set piece tries to 32% set piece tries. And they've gone from 30 points a game to 46 points a game. So they've changed the entire way that it works. And it's been incredibly effective.
It's a pretty good CV.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think we're getting to the crux of it in terms of when Rennie's a head coach, that's what he wants. Like that's what I suppose he sees as the most opportunist approach. Because from set piece, Bryn, you go through so many defensive sets at training, and like if you get broken in set piece, someone's done something really wrong. It probably shouldn't happen. You should at least get to 2 or 3 phases. And normally is from someone jumping out of system, but when it's into turnover, it's literally if you're first into the space, you're gone. But then that's what I mean. I think when you watch both the Chiefs, the Hurricanes to a point, and obviously Kobe. It's that if you just watch the screen, it's that reaction of the players. It's just like everyone's in on it, either for a clean, get in a position where you can receive a pass, clean, play halfback, ball up. It's just it's held to scouted, but it's like it's chaos, but they're all calm. Like they know what they're doing, they know what they're trying to achieve.
The other person obviously that's in this conversation is the person who actually has the job right now, and that's Scott Hansen. Brennan, you've spent a lot of time with Scott Hansen at the Crusaders. Where do you see his strengths?
Biggest thing that Scott does very, very well, it's his attention to detail. Like I think, I think he came on the show a couple of times and Jipper got, was frothing at the mouth with the way that he was kind of talking. But I think, his attention to detail with whether that's through the breakdown, your collision area, being able to have the detail around your set piece strikes or your phase play strikes and being able to be accountable for the people that are running that, that's his biggest strength. He does a very, very good work around his analytical work, being able to do that individually as a player and collectively as a group. But I would say that's his biggest strength, his attention to detail and being able to get players to know exactly what they're doing and where they need to be. That would be Scott Hansen's biggest strength, I reckon.
What about in those areas, Brenner, though, in your time, how much, I suppose, focus was put on the unstructured, the turnover ball, the kick return?
There was a lot of work, and I think the way that the game probably is going, especially off escorts or through your kicking game, it was a big piece around that two pass. Whether you were able to catch the ball, being able to get off a contestable kick, or even if it's a long kick, being able to get it to your playmakers to be able to, get a 1-2 phase attack. So, if you're doing an escort and being able to do a box kick, they take a carry from that. If you can be able to get, the ball into hands like your Will Jordan, your Caleb Clarks, or your main ball carriers into that space, being able to just play unstructured. So he was really, really big around that and made it a little bit more clear, I think, where specific players needed to be, where there was a big forward on the edge, big forward in the middle. Your Tamaiti Williams as an example, get him in the middle of the field, then being able to open up both sides. He was pretty big around that, I thought, as well.
How does that line up with what Dave Rennie would want?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the stats still suggest, if you look here, 40% turnover counter tries, kick return with players that have probably come out of the systems of the Super Rugby coaches. So it does line up, but does it line up in the sense of, for Dave Rennie, that it excites him? Like I feel like he's a relationships guy. And as you sort of mentioned, like even with Roger, like he wasn't there this time, all things are probably pointing to Blair, but I think the other option is someone like a Clark Laidlaw. Like if you look at the Hurricanes, I know he's not the attack coach and he hasn't, there's been a number of attack coaches over his tenure, but he has been the constant and he's got that sevens mindset, and sevens is all about click counter. And if you look at the way I think the Hurricanes have developed this season, more importantly, they've done the basic skills well. If you know what I mean, like it's catch pass, it's run between defenders, win the collision, then offload. I don't think I've seen anything reckless. They haven't got a high turnover count. They score a lot of points and they keep the ball alive. Even if it's taking a tackle and then popping the ball up, it's not pop touch as such, but they don't actually spend too many numbers at breakdowns. They want that speed of ball. And then even when they slow the ball down, the one thing I like about the Hurricanes is that their B runner, or I suppose the pointy end of their pod, is their ability to generate tempo. Like Duplessis Karifi did it really well for Balin Sullivan's try on the weekend, is he's square and he took on the defence and then pulled it back as he's still remaining square deep to Love. And it's almost that generated quick ball, because then the Highlanders defence were like, oh, we're going to rush up. They rushed up, short ball to Whinianganufo, short ball to Sullivan, and the beautifulness of that sevens mindset, and that's why Clark Laidlaw has brought in someone like Whinianganufo, is he kept running, and it just didn't allow Tava Nawai to get into that space. Sullivan can see the body language of Tangitaus heading out to the, I suppose, the edge, because there's one more player out there, and takes it and there's a try. So the one thing I like about the Hurricanes is I feel like they can do the click counter, but then they can generate speed, sort of like the Springboks do with their sacrificial sort of ruck to create speed. They really do it really well off that forward pod of creating that depth to make the defence almost panic. And then the skill set of Love and go out the back, do the rest. But so much of it is about recreating something that you're looking for when you make games.
So you think Clark Laidlaw having overseen that as a coach and having been an attack coach under Tom Coventry at London Irish a decade ago, he does have experience there.
I think he's got that attacking mindset. He's got the knowledge of his time that he spent in the sevens that is almost like I don't know, it seems like a perfect match, and he's really got a belief system in the players he has at the moment to bring out the best of them. And I know like everyone can say, this is recency bias, but they've done it a couple of weeks. They've only really slipped up in Fiji in poor conditions. Outside of that, they have been red hot. The question is, how do you continue that style in wet condition or other conditions that has the same accuracy? Now we don't know. We don't have a stat that says 40% of these games were in the rain and they still managed to do it. But I think that's probably the biggest context. And then the other context, I suppose, to credit Scott Hansen's, credentials, is he's done it at Super, but the stats actually do back up quite a nice picture at test match level as well from an attacking sense.
Which stats in particular?
Well, I suppose the turnover is still at that 40%, and there's still a high number of tries. Like the All Blacks can score points. It was probably just at crucial moments, the skill set execution let them down.
Yeah.
And I suppose what I was getting to was Clark Laidlaw. Even when, I suppose they're not forcing the pass. I don't feel like the Chiefs force the pass. It's not like a flick pass or it's like, something crazy. It's literally just waiting, reading the pitches, and then having that willingness to get yourself in a position. And it's really important that the people around the ball get themselves in a position that you can clean, you can receive a pass, or you can play that halfback style. And numbers 1 to 15 across all these teams seem to have that mindset. So all are, I suppose, relatively in the running. If you look at it from, we're assuming that's what he's looking for, but history suggests that's what he's looking for. I think it'll just come down to that synergy.
Now, Jason Holland is the current Hurricanes attack coach.
Oh,
yeah. He's now the Blues head coach. Are you pretty happy about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the most exciting thing is he wants to be on the grass. He looks like he's got real energy being back in the Hurricanes and having that ability to coach. And I think what's been awesome at the Blues and Vern is they've grown the group. They've grown their willingness to coach, but also the players to coach themselves. And I feel like he's coming into an environment that really grew under Leon McDonald. It's taken another step under Vern, and I think someone of Jason's experience, he's had experience at test level. He's been extremely successful with the Hurricanes. I think it's a really exciting prospect for the Blues and the region to get excited about.
And we'll have Jason Holland on the podcast next week, and we'll be able to ask plenty of questions of him. So Blues fans, if you've got some questions for your new coach, please send them through. It'll put you into the draw for that ATHLETECH prize pack to get those supplements as well for next month's draw. So each week, a person will go into the draw, and at the end of the month, you will be in to win some ATHLETECH supplements. There's creatine, there's protein, and all sorts of other goodies in there as well. If you are within New Zealand, send us through a question. We'll answer that question. You'll be in the draw, and hopefully you can get yourself some of these lovely ATHLETECH products. Got a question through from J Bickers 98, and he says, "Hey guys, love the pod. Just wanted a question I'd love you to answer. How come no one is talking about Warren Gatland for the assistant coaches? World Cup, Lions experience. As an assistant, you could be working in some pretty good roles."
To answer that question, probably wouldn't go into an assistant role. I think he's been, too long being able to run a program. And yeah, I'm probably not too sure what not the credentials. I think obviously he lives up to the credentials, but I think what they're kind of looking for. An attack coach would probably be what they're looking for. Does Warren do that at this stage in his career and the way that he does coach? I'm not too sure, Jipper.
The more you think about it, it's more about if Warren put his head in the ring. It's not about him being sort of shoulder tapped. I think he would need to, because it could be insulting. Hey, mate, do you want to be my assistant?
Yeah.
Because you talk about relationships and understanding, I do just get the feeling like Rennie seems to be like a big relationships guy, and it's critical that they've probably had some sort of experience together.
I mean, we heard Mike Blair talk about how he didn't want to be a head
Yeah.
coach. He wanted to be hands-on. Warren Gatland's career has been the complete opposite. He spent so much time organising and administrating and overseeing that's probably where his skill set is now, right?
Yeah, well, it's definitely for the last sort of 15 years.
Yeah.
He's sort of been the guy. And I think I'd probably more about him not really wanting the role,
Yeah.
other than being the head coach maybe.
Mm.
But I suppose, I don't even know if he applied. He might just be done. You know, he might, if he wanted it, he probably would have applied for the All Blacks role.
Yeah, mate. Life ain't bad on Waihi Beach, I'll tell you that.
No. He's been pretty successful. I don't think he needs to do too much more.
The other big chat last week was Tana Umaga. He acknowledged that he is in the running. He's been approached to be the All Blacks defence coach. Jippy, you've played under Tana. Talk to me about what he's good at.
Yeah, look, I think first thing I've played under as a head coach and a defensive coach, and they're quite different roles. If I look at it specifically from a defence coach point of view, defence isn't complicated. Sometimes we, the athlete or coaches, complicate it. Tana doesn't complicate it. It is literally about the simplicity of winning collisions. And now it's like, oh, you're going to win collisions, but win it together. You know, it's a little bit about first man set, first man to take the space is going to do really well. And I just think it's something he has a massive amount of respect for, because he was extremely good at it as a player, but he has a simplistic way of articulating it to allow actions to come off the back of it. And at the end of the day, that's the coach's role. And he certainly took our Blues defence as when he became the Blues defence coach to a high level.
Bruno, on the other side, you were playing against the Blues defence. Was there a lot of respect there and a lot of understanding that they were operating in a pretty good way under Tana?
I had the chance to be able to play with him in 2016, and I think, as a coach, and I think what he's done, being an All Black himself and an All Black captain, he brings a lot of that kind of aura with him, which I think is really important as a coach, having that respect element. But I think what I really enjoyed about Tana as well, whenever we played the Blues, the collision area was always a big part of it. And I think, the detail within that and being able to, have the understanding of what the defence system looks like, whether that's through high line speed or whether it's your 2v1 and being able to get the contact area right. I always found that Tana was very, very good around that space. So I think at the international level, I think, what he was able to do, I think with Moana Pacifica as well, Jib has kind of touched on, I think in the past with their defence system, they've been kind of operating at that 90% when they're going very, very well. And when you're kind of operating at that kind of level, your detail with what the collision area is very good. So, I think with what he can do as a coach, I rate him as a coach, but I think also what he can do him as a player in that aura and that All Black environment, what he's done as a player, I think will be a big part for the players as well, knowing that what he's done as a player as well.
Yeah, I think as well, like from a coaching point of view, like physicality for him, winning the collision is a given. That's not something he's going to coach. That's something you've got or you don't. But I think a couple of areas he is outstanding in terms of you understanding as a player is double efforts and getting back in the game. Basically, you make a tackle, you got to roll out of there, get back in the defensive line. So there's a couple of things there. He rolls out, gets back in the defensive line. That's you getting back in the game. But then it allows the assist tackler to see a clear picture to try and jackal or slow the ball down. He also is smart enough to, I think, like what he trained really well is, okay, the tackler's not always going to be able to roll out there. One of the most frustrating penalties in the game is when someone is in that jackal position and you can see your teammate is caught in there. So if you go in there, the rest probably, if you don't go in there, the rest probably going to go, look, he's trying, keep the ball. The moment someone goes in there, they're like, well, no, you can't be clean because he's there, so it's a penalty.
Yeah.
And it's those little, I suppose, small micro details, but there's not a list of 20 of them. It's like 3 or 4 things you've got to do. One, it's your one-on-one tackle. 2, it's shutting down time and space. Double efforts, getting back in the game, and then being smart with your decision making in and around the breakdown because it impacts so much wide. Obviously, I'm pro him because he did improve myself as an individual, but he improved us in the Blues about being smarter defensively, like not chasing battles that are lost. Because sometimes when you're in teams that are losing, you try to take your frustration out on the physical, but it's like you're actually doing more damage, giving away penalties, getting offside with the ref, missing your jump because you're 2 seconds behind and then you get caught offside. So all those sorts of things. And I suppose the last thing that I didn't mention on his key list is the ability to communicate. Ross, I'm inside you. I've got your inside, fold or there was just a couple of things that I really like. But the most important thing, I suppose, I'm trying to get across is it's not rocket science, and he doesn't make it rocket science.
Right.
It's the basics done really well.
It was actually 2011 that Tana Umaga was with the Chiefs, so he missed out on being in the Rennie camp. But never mind. Okay, let's have a look at some of the Super Rugby that went on the weekend. The Hurricanes against the Highlanders. Brynna, that score mounted very, very quickly. I don't think that we thought that the Highlanders were that far behind the Hurricanes heading into that game.
I don't think that, but I think you've got to give credit to the Hurricanes, and I think the way that they are attacking, we've just touched on probably the attack coach for the All Blacks. But look, man, the attack that the Hurricanes are operating right now is really good to see. I think the likes of Whingao and Ofo. I think considering that he probably is going to Newcastle, would he be in the All Black discussion? The fact how he is playing right now, scoring a hat trick, but his efforts and what he's doing on the wing. But what I love about them at the moment is their phase play shape, and I think marrying up when it comes to the forwards, being able to, win that breakdown area, being able to get that quick ball, but the likes of Geordie Barrett, Billy Proctor, Ruben Love with the way he played on the weekend, it just seems like there's synergy when they do attack and they're able to marry up with the forwards, being able to get that quick ball, and whenever they see their opportunity, they're able to execute, and the fluidity, I think the way that they are attacking, option, short ball, bridge, kick pass, whatever it may be, it's just singing all in all high notes at the moment. So that's my biggest thing that I took away from that. I think, the Highlanders probably, if they had their time again, they probably would have wanted to be better. But I think the way that the Hurricanes is attacking right now and the synergy that their backs and they're marrying up their forwards, I think Jipper, it's probably the best in the competition, I think, thus far.
Yeah, I sort of touched on the Sullivan try, and I think it is a good example, off the back of what we did last week around, I suppose, that engagement of that player, or the backdoor player at the back. That the beauty of what Love was, he must be a fan of the show. I don't know. I'm obviously taking the piss, but he was engaged, but he was deep, man. Like he knew Tavatava Nawai and Jonah Lowe wanted to shut down time and space, and that I just think between the skill set of the forwards, it's the Kirifi ball out the back, it's the Derns tit line, but that ball out the back so deep. And then it's also Ruben's ability to just hold his feet. He's not punching on out there trying to challenge. He wants those. He's like a puppeteer. Every time he's engaged at the back, if he wants to be tight and do the Richard Moana and go through because he sees it, he'll do it. But he'll explode from the same place. So from a defender's point of view, you're like, what's he doing? Is he going to hold out and is he trying to draw me? So you're just hesitant or you're a little bit slow. And then his ability outside him is just the patience. It was the two big boys, the two props outside him that stayed in line with him. Do you know how hard it is, like sometimes for type 5 members, being one of them, is not to get too eager because you've got to be, you've got to be bodies in motion, but you've also got to hold your feet off the guy that you're going to get the pass from, because if you're not in a realistic position to receive that, the defense can just push off you. So it's all that sort of connection is just so sharp with the Hurricanes in the moment. And then obviously they've got the ball out the back to Whingao Ofo, who shifts it to Sullivan, and then the width that's kept by Morby. It runs really, really smooth. And it's easy to go, man, the Canes are on. But I do think the Highlanders would look at it. 40% failed exits. I do think Miller was a big out. Like he is the controller. He is, we spoke about Jamie Joe Styles. He doesn't want to play too much rugby in his half. They played a lot of rugby and they spilt a lot of ball, which just gave too many. The Highlanders aren't a team that ever concedes 50 points, but they just gave too many opportunities back to the Hurricanes in just prime position.
They were superb at taking those little opportunities. What we saw was that new scrum half tap kick rule coming into play where Roigard just quickly went and scored from the side of the scrum instead of going to the back, Brynner. That was a really quick, well thought out piece of play from him.
It's using the rules to his advantage, and I think as a halfback, and even not even the halfback that's defensively in that position, even the flankers or the number 8 or the first defender that's kind of back, you don't get enough time. You don't get enough time to be able to, see the quick thoughts of Cam Roigard. So, obviously been able to get those little snipes and was able to score off one and been able to, I think for one of his tries as well, to set that tempo to be able, get a snipe on that ruck as well. So, I think hopefully now, if teams, you want to be able to get that quick tempo, it's a big part of it, because I think not even Cam Roigard's example, but I think, that the Hurricanes trip as well, they wanted to be able to play the tempo. They were doing quick taps, quick line outs, and I think, with that kind of attacking ability that they have had, that we've kind of touched on, it's really hard to defend.
They're a prime example of what we're talking about. Attack there is they just want to go catch defences off guard. It's just everyone's in action. Everyone knows Cam Roigard. As a defender, Cam Roigard's going to go it, but it's his reaction time between that to getting the tap on the boot and going. Like there's other halfbacks across the competition that had similar opportunity but haven't been able to. Like he's ready. I don't think Inari would be any different. Like that's the structure. They are just constantly all go.
We had an email come through from Damien who was talking about the best way to defend when a halfback goes like that. How can you stop them? And Brent, I'm really interested to hear your take on this. His suggestion was that the halfback actually doesn't defend at the scrum. They go behind the line to where the ball is likely to pop out and be able to come forward off the line.
No, not really, because a 9 in terms of when it comes to scrums, if you look at Cam Roigard's example, really close to the line, there's so much work that the 9 has to do at the scrum, being able to connect with your flankers, being able to connect with your number 8, connect with the first defender, probably if he's going to go into the boot of the scrum, being able to have those connections. So, if you wanted to be able to do that, yep, you could, but at the same time, you never know when a free kick's going to come. It's not like it's been able to be manufactured, right? So, I think, if it was manufactured and you knew the free kick was coming, then of course. But I don't think it's too hard. I think it's too hard to be able to try and get yourself in a position where you're going to be there every single time.
Obviously, I've never had to defend there, but we're going to have to find something.
Yeah.
Like, is it the only option? Like, Bryn, in realistic nature, if you've got a midfield scrum, 5 out, could you not, from a system point of view, just say, look, we're going to sacrifice a little bit here in terms of pressure at the base, and we're going to have someone in a position that can shut that down? Can you move? Can you do the old double bluff? When the Chiefs brought it in 2012, 2013, the old double bluff, they'd paint the picture, they're covering the backfield, and then as the ball's coming into the line out of scrum, they'd all rush up into the front field and try and... Is there a way of doing that as a halfback, or once you've made that decision to sit back, you can't come up, I'm assuming?
I think probably the only other position that, other than a 9, is probably a 10. And I think in that kind of example, you have your 10 that's kind of at the base or the boot of the scrum, being able to go either way depending on what the kind of formation is. So in that scenario, if there is a free kick, then your number 10 would be ideal in that situation, being able to come up from the quick tap. But the only other late pitcher, to your point, Jip, is that you could be able to start at the tunnel. I think as a 9, you probably know at the halfway tunnel you can't go probably like a metre or 2 metres from the scrum. If you do go back to the number 8's feet, that line, you can go as far as you want, northwest, no, sorry, not northwest, you can go as far as you want from that line. But I'd only say, other than the 9, your 10 would probably be your best bet in that scenario with Cam Roigard. He would be in that position, being able to be there.
Bloody goal post pad in the way. Okay, you put your 10 there. What's a bigger impact? Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like you're on your line, you need your 10 out, you need to bring that line speed.
Yep.
Are you not best to just sacrifice the halfback?
As a 9, if I see him go to the boot, what it does do, it makes me be able to, and if you have a really good scrum, you're able to attack into that space. So where the 9 would be, at the goalpost, you would attack that space knowing that, if you have a really good scrum, your flankers defensively are going to be on that scrum, and you're going into that space. Like if a Cam Roigard is picking that and seeing that the 9's in their boot, he's going into that space straight away with a 12, a big ball carrier, or even like a number 8 is going into that space. So it is a little bit difficult. The midfield scrum is probably the hardest. You could probably get away with that on the sideline or left-hand side scrum or right-hand side scrum to be able to get away with that. But that's the hardest scrum to defend. And your 9 is so pivotal, being able to go probably, if they have a 2-2-2 where you've got, 2 behind, 2 on the left and 2 on the right, that number 9 is so crucial in being able to stop that defence and not being in that space what we're kind of touching on in the back of the boot.
God, I'm going to sound so cynical here. Are you better to get a penalty away?
Probably.
Do you know what I mean?
Like, give out the 3 points.
Because I've watched, I just don't know. The only option I can see is what Damien suggested.
But then
you're going to be left vulnerable somewhere else. But mate, if you're not there, you're not stopping. Like
Yeah.
they're going over. At least you can force them to do a crossfield kick that may be too far. You're putting more skill execution at risk. It's probably risk versus reward.
Well, and if you back your scrum, then it changes that mindset, doesn't it? Because the presumption that you put the person back there is based on the fact that there might be a free kick going against you. But if your scrum is very strong...
No. See, I think if your scrum's strong, put them back there.
Right, yeah.
Because you should think it's going to dominate.
Yeah.
And then you can fill space either way. It's when it's that quick. It's like a hit down free kick. Like, I mean, it's freakish how quick he tapped. It was like bang, bang.
Yeah.
It was like there was no reaction.
You can't prepare for that.
What I'm trying to say is, okay, like what's the least amount of risk? You can't prepare, but it's like how often do you get a midfield scrum 5 out? Not very often. But when you go there, let's just limit the risk, put it back there, whether our scrum's going well or not. Because if it's going well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If it's, because scrums are 50-50, man. Like you can be going well and you make one mistake. Even a good scrum can make a mistake and it's a free kick. I'm going down a rabbit hole. It's a very good question.
Yeah.
He's definitely in the money for the old ATHLETECH.
Well, he lives overseas, so unfortunately we can't send the ATHLETECH prize over to Damien, but he is a very regular emailer and contributor to the program. So thank you, Damien, for sending that through. Before we leave the Hurricanes game, we've had some examples of referees getting injured in the last few weeks, and the Gardner example was an absolute cracker, Brynner. He looked like he'd been shot. But really just looked like he'd been slightly brushed. He made a lot of that.
I honestly thought, I was like, no, he's probably like popped his shoulder. Do you know what I mean? Like obviously Herington's hit him in that kind of, in that kind of spot there. And I'm like, oh, I think he's done his shoulder, but a miraculous recovery. I'm not gonna lie. The fact that he was able to finish the game, I thought he was all gone. And the fact he was able to blow the whistle. I don't know what hand he used, but the fact he was able to blow the whistle to be able to get it done as well. It's full credit to him be able to, fulfill his referee duties. But yeah, I thought he was all gone, Jipper. I thought he was done and dusted.
I felt like it was probably an initial blow, but then he'd overcommitted. He'd put his hands in. He put the full hand in. He went for the all in, and he was like, I can't really back out of this now. I would have gone to the sheds. I would have just said, look, nah, it's no good. Yeah. It's no good. I can't fulfill my duties.
Like one of those footballers being stretched off and getting off the stretcher and walking away.
I reckon that was the better option. And I thought the green whistle was out at one point. I was like, is that a green whistle? Oh, too good. Too good.
All right. Well, good luck for recovery there, Angus. I'm sure that it's been sore.
Recovery from what?
Speaking of recovery, the Brumbies in the last few minutes recovered from what seemed a certain loss at 24-7 down, Brynner, to somehow get there. Now, I do have a question that came through for the ATHLETECH questions of the week, and he wanted to give you guys a bit of crap.
I saw this.
So Sam Jorgensen said, when will Jipper and Bryn start giving Aussie teams their proper due? Tipping them against New Zealand teams, even at home, is like pulling teeth for both the lads. I've just watched the Brumbies' wonderful comeback against the Chiefs, and I reckon now is the time the boys cop two of the Aussie teams being proper contenders. The less said about my Force boys, the better.
Who's the team? Just joking. Just joking. Just joking. Oh, look, I expect more from the Brumbies. They tackled at 80% again. I think that comeback was more about the Chiefs' inaccuracy than the Brumbies winning that game. That's just my personal take. I'm not saying the Brumbies aren't a good team, but I felt the Chiefs squad going over there and at 24/7, I sort of don't know where it all went horribly wrong because they kept putting themselves in a position to win. Yes, the missed penalty, but like they were working their way. I mean, credit to Corey Toole. I will credit him. That was a miraculous play.
Oh, he got off the line fast.
Yeah, but it was just like. It was, look, full, like, I think the Reds, like, if we are to look at it, like, the Brumbies and Reds are genuine contenders. Well, I'll keep my powder dry on the Reds, but stick with this Brumbies game. They have won ugly all year.
Brynner, one of the things that went their way, Muirhead, the deliberate knockdown. The Chiefs were up in arms. Was that a deliberate knockdown or was that not a deliberate knockdown? Because in years gone by, that would have been a yellow card.
We talk around consistency. And like when I saw that, I was like, that's a penalty, at least. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was obviously a knock-on. So that's an interpretation for what the ref has been able to do, and the touch judges have been able to. The TMO probably doesn't get involved in that situation, but like, it was pretty blatant for me. Jipper, I don't know about you, but when I did see it, I was like, man, that like, it's obviously the interpretation from what the ref did think, but for me, that was like it was a penalty at least.
I think there's a solution. It just needs to be always a knock-on. It's just such a frustrating discussion. And a few years ago, I remember being in like a working group around some rules, and I think it was with Conrad Smith, and it was like, it's just a knock-on. If they get in that passing space and you pass it there,
It's your fault.
it's your fault.
Yeah.
So it's a skill execution on the attack's point of view. And then there's no debate. Okay, he knocked it on, scrum. Or because they don't like scrums anymore, it's a free kick. I don't know. But it's an annoying rule for me.
If you look at league as an example, I know to your point, you've got to be able to put the person away for that 2v1 or whatever it may be, that last pass. But that smackdown, when they're just blatantly diving and like being able to stop that try, I don't think that's a good look.
It's simple to understand though.
It's gone on
Yeah.
and on and on. And
It's not working.
no, but at least before there was an expectation that if you basically didn't catch the ball, it was a yellow card.
You want a defender to have a crack because that creates a scoring opportunity both ways. And I think a yellow card, okay, it's a penalty then. Not a scrum, it's just a penalty all the time. It's not a yellow card. Something that just is consistent. Because I don't think it's a bad thing. Like, as an attack team, that's what you're looking for, is an individual trying to solve a solution on their own. That's something to manipulate. That's a win. Penalty then. There you go, Bryn, I met you halfway. It's just a penalty now, every time.
I think that's easy because, like I said, when I saw that happen, I was like, oh, that, like, for me, I was like, that's a penalty at least, and it's really easy for referees to be able to officiate that, but for people watching as well, it's like, okay, cool, we'll just go into a scrum or a penalty, and we're not like thinking like, oh, that should be a penalty because with what the rules are and what we've seen over the last few years, or just in January actually.
Don't gather it in.
Yeah.
You've had your crack. You missed it.
Sorry.
Skill execution, penalty.
Yeah. The other big thing for this game, and obviously had some sort of effect on the team, because you can see how proud they were of James Slipper. James Slipper becoming the #1 Super Rugby cap holder. You've obviously packed down against him.
Benjamin Button.
Yeah.
He's playing some good code this year.
Yeah.
He's got the old ball carry. He's got the kicking game going. Look, absolute exceptional scrummager. He's like every loosehead though. Like, they're not complicated human beings. They do the simple things really well, and they just do it time and time again. But I do think he has developed his game, throughout his tenure with the Reds and now his time with the Brumbies. He just seems to get better and better, I think, in his all-round game. Like rugby's evolved from what a loosehead prop was doing when he first came into the game. It was scrum, lift, clean your rucks, make your tackles.
And then add a 40-22 to your game later on when you get the opportunity.
Beauty.
Well, the question I had, because I always find it really interesting, the individual milestones, the 100 games, in this case, a very extreme one, 203 games. The teammates seem to take that milestone on board with them, Bryn. Is it a major part of a team's culture, each person's milestone?
I think so, 100%. Like, I think, and I hate to use like Jipper as an example here, but I think when Jipper had his 100th game for Harbour as an example, you almost like, you go through your preparation and being able to get it right and being able to get your own individual prep. But I think collectively you want to be able to try to have a win for your mate, I think, importantly. So I think there is a little bit more when it comes to that milestone. And even for myself personally, I think when I played my 100th game for the Crusaders, the nerves I actually got was probably worse playing the milestone game for myself personally. I think it was a lot more, you get your congratulations from the people, from your family, from your friends throughout the week, and you almost want to get to the game so you're kind of done with all those messages and you can just do what you want to do, on a normal week. So I actually found the milestone games a lot harder, being able to try and stay process driven and being able to just stay in the moment. Whereas playing for someone else was a lot easier because you could just concentrate on what your role was and what your preparation looked like for that week.
Because there's so much going on outside of the game that even if they're a captain or a senior player, actually just going up to them and saying, "Hey, just play. We've got this. We've got your back." It just simplifies that week for them, because then they've just got to go, okay, well, in Slipper's case, he's like, "I just got to scrum. do my line-out lifts, carry here and there, and the rest will take care of itself,
Yeah.
which it did in the last 20 minutes.
He enjoyed clapping Corey Toole on.
He wasn't too happy when he came off, but I tell you what, he had a big old grin when Corey Toole was all here.
Well, when they copped 3 penalties with 5 minutes to go, there was no way that I felt like the Chiefs were going to lose that game.
You felt like it must be coming,
Yeah.
but the Brumbies did keep turning up defensively.
Okay, let's move on to that Moana Pacifica Crusaders game. It was a big win for the Crusaders in the end, but they were pretty challenged at the start. And one of the real stars of that game for Moana Pacifica was Joel Lamb. And we will have Joel in an interview on at Aotearoa Rugby Pod official channels this week. Really interesting story of a bloke whose career was all at odds after having a promising start, and now suddenly he's back at 23 years of age, and he's a grounded, interesting individual who's been to league and back and all sorts. A really good chat there, so keep an eye out on our channels for the rest of the week. Brenna, you spent some time with Joel Lamb. Doesn't surprise you that he's coming along so well?
You know, he spent a lot of time at the Crusaders Academy, and I think coming through that kind of system, I think he got his debut for the Crusaders, you know, as a young man, probably 21, what I think. But I think, look, very, very detailed. That's one way that I would be able to explain Joel. I think he's very, very good when it comes to his homework and his preparation side. But what I've really enjoyed is that he's obviously very, very fit, but his instinctiveness, Chip, around being able to, you know, poke his head through a gap, being able to take it to the line, being able to stress that hard defense, being able to, you know, execute, you know, I guess more so under pressure, considering that probably hasn't played a lot of rugby. So, yeah, got a lot of time for Joel. He's you know, obviously played for Manu Samoa, played a bit of league, which I obviously heard in the interview as well. But yeah, a great start for a young man. I think hopefully for Moana Pacifica, you know, Augustine Polly's going to be out for a little bit with that red card. But yeah, a great one to be able to watch, and you know, and a great story I think for New Zealanders being able to go through not the traditional route.
For Moana though, watching that game, the biggest thing they need to realise, because the Crusaders did, and we spoke about their backfield last week, they did an amazing job in the backfield. Is they sort of covered it deep, and then Moana couldn't make the dents in the defensive line to find the edge enough. So, you know, they had 11 kicks. Is there a way that they can come up with an ability to find that space? Because that's where the space is. They just can't get it there. 2 times they got it there. Pellegrini had some depth, drew defenders out, found Lalamilo, inside ball to Joel Lamb, try time. Whaialangi gets a ball on the edge. He gets on the outside of, I think it was Dallas McLeod, inside ball to offer, try. Every time they get to the edge, like it's all there, the pitches are there. But I think the Crusaders understood, they've done their prep so well that they weren't going to kick it there, or they weren't going to do a short kick in behind, because they remained deep the whole time. So it was either we're going to play a lot in our 40 and turn the ball back to you, and then you're going to punish us. That was sort of the flow of that second half.
The Crusaders, though, Brenna, I think there's a number of players there who are leaving the team who are showing their real value, aren't they? Braden Enor, Sevu Reese, like they've got a few guys at the end of this year are gone, but geez, the class of those guys in this game.
Yeah, and I think you obviously talk about Dallas McLeod as well, another one that's leaving with David Havili injured. So, yeah, I think you know, a lot of those players that you have kind of touched on have played a lot of games and a lot of meaningful games, which I think is important as well. So, and you know, good teams, and I think you probably, you know, with the Crusaders probably haven't been able to do this year is their error rate. I think, you know, they were 11 turnovers on the weekend, which is probably one of their lowest of the season. And I think if you look at the penalties, it was 6 on the weekend. So, yeah, that's been a big work on, I guess, for that group with the high error rate that we've probably seen in the first part of the year. You know, you look at their attacking stats. You know, over 1,000 meters carried, and 162 carries. So, you know, I don't think their attack. Well, there's nothing wrong with their attack, especially when Will Jordan's there. But I think their high error rate was a big part of the reason why they probably lost this the early part of the season. I think there is one thing as well, like the tackle percentage probably as well, Ross. Like I know they're operating probably in the low 80s. That's probably one thing that they do want to work on. But I thought they were a lot better, Chipper, considering, you know, that edge defense, which we probably saw in the first, probably the last 2 games where the Blues and the last game that they did have, there were a lot of, I guess, line breaks or bad reads on the edge. I thought it was a lot better with what we saw against Moana Pacifica.
Those players may be leaving, but we do have Fletcher Newell, our new inside centre. I tell you what, didn't he look great in open space? Oh, and then the little pop pass over. Then he gets back up, double effort, plays halfback just short. George Bell scores. What a 50th. That is a 50th to remember. Two scrum penalties too.
This is possibly the greatest year for attacking props since Richard Band scored that 40-metre try against the All Blacks. We're seeing attacking props all over the place doing crazy things.
It probably doesn't beat the Welsh prop, but it was a hell of a run. Put the afterburners on, look for support. All you young midfielders out there, catch a glimpse of our new inside centre of the Crusaders.
It was his 50th game, and that's probably the first time he's been able to net that much open space. So, but in saying that, big Gus, the week before was able to get through. So maybe it is Chipper. Maybe you should come back, mate.
There's still an intercept in you too, isn't there?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I didn't want to bring up the flick pass or anything on the same ground, but we'll let it go.
You don't want to at all. The Reds was the other one as far as results are concerned that I just didn't quite see coming.
I went back to when they played last year. They lost last minute, 36-33. They kicked 11 times, 300 metres, and they were gassed the last 20. Got out to a big lead, and the Drua just ran them down. They made poor decisions in and around the breakdown just because they were absolutely buggered. And they learned. I think it was 31 kicks they had on the weekend. They didn't overplay their hand. They were happy to defend. Even when they had a yellow card, Dungunu's decision to go into breakdowns and get the steal, it was a very well coached, well strategized win. And I think when you've got that coming in to the Wallabies off the back of Joe Schmidt putting some awesome rocks in place, if I was a Wallabies fan, I'd be getting excited because that is the detail, the ability to not forget and then rectify it with pretty much a similar squad and execute in that manner in a total different game plan.
Yeah.
And it wasn't high scoring like last. They had to grind. They went through the forwards. Middle the Drua probably had a little bit of a high turnover rate.
The Reds missed 30 tackles, Brenner, and didn't concede a try.
I think, they had 9 entries and they had 0% conversion rate. I think they obviously scored 6 points, but, when you get those entries and you're not able to score points off that, especially in tricky conditions, that probably leads to it. So, yeah, I think it's probably one thing the Reds probably do want to work on. I think, being able to miss those many tackles, but I think if you are the Fiji and Drua as well, considering they are at home and it is a bit of a fortress, them being there the last, having their wins there, that conversion rate, not being able to score any points, other than, 2 penalties was probably a big part of it as well, Jipper.
Around 85% is about right. They're Arvo footy over there.
Right.
Like they're a hard team. They jink and jive. Like I do think the stats people are getting a little bit ruthless. Like some of these defensive stats are just dipping into the 70s. Like I'm glad they went around when I was playing, that's for sure. But I was just super impressed. I just thought it was a really, really sharp performance. Talk about Harry Wilson's development. You look at the individual players, their growth. I think Dungunu's just going from strength to strength at centre. Les Kiss is a coach that makes people better, and he doesn't forget. He will not make the same mistake twice, which at international level will pay dividends.
So are the Reds your team of the week, considering that?
It's a hard one because I was so impressed with the Hurricanes. I just didn't see that coming against the Highlanders. And I mentioned the Highlanders' errors, but a lot of that was through defensive pressure. But I think in terms of the challenge of Fiji, the Reds it's probably the Reds Hurricanes. I probably can't split the two.
Yeah.
So there's 2 performances I didn't pick.
Yeah.
To be honest.
The things that Jip touched on when it came to the Reds is a big result, being able to get that over in Fiji. But look, I think the Hurricanes, I think, I've talked about, I thought I had them as a dark horse at the start of the year. And I just think the way being able to dismantle, the Highlanders, who we probably didn't think was going to be that kind of scoreline. So I think the way that they are attacking, we touched on obviously the attacking coaches and who those options kind of were. But I think Clark Laidlaw in that group, they're attacking with how they are. They're the team to beat at the moment. So it'd be interesting to see in wet weather footy. I know they have played a lot of dry weather, but I think with the way that they are attacking and the multiple options they do have, and the synergy, I think, of marrying up their forwards' dominance has married up really well for the backs as well in the Hurricanes. So, yeah, the Hurricanes to me is my team of the week.
And your player of the week?
Whittingham awful. I think for me would be my player of the week. I think, I know he's going overseas, and I think, very similar, I think, probably back in our day, Jipper, I think Waisake Naholo, he signed a contract to be able to go over to, was it to France, but somehow got out of his contract because obviously the All Blacks are very, very interested in him. But I think, look, man, like we talked about Caleb Tangitau, Caleb Clark in that left wing position, the skill set that they do have. But look, I think the way that he's playing as well, very explosive, being able to beat defenders one-on-one, being able to be very explosive, very fast, and pretty good in the air as well. So been very, very impressed with him. Not too sure, obviously, what's going to happen post this year, but the way that he is playing, if he probably wasn't going to Newcastle, Jipper, he'd probably be in the running, I think, for that All Black squad in the Dream Series.
My player of the week, just an honourable mention, Taufa Funaki. How good is he? Like a couple of times, like Sam Knock last week got taken out early, came on, he was absolutely outstanding. Came on again, Finn had done a great job, and then just his ability to create something out of nothing. The Blues went 7 from 8 in the 22. 5 tries, 2 penalties. 7 from 8. That is just good numbers. But my player of the week, and you just can't go past them on disgraced a fellow Crusader did, Fletcher Newell. That was absolute gold. There is no better player.
That must hurt you saying that. I don't think I've ever heard you say a Crusader.
It was good. Okay, let's get into our tipping for the weekend. Moana Pacifica at home against the Highlanders. Both teams coming off tough losses.
Few banged up bodies after Moana. I think I'll go the Highlanders.
Highlanders?
I'll go the Highlanders. I think they'll get a bit of a rev up from Jamie Joseph in the way they played on the weekend. So yeah, I'll be picking Highlanders.
Okay, Brumbies at home against the Tahs. That seems like it should only go one way.
Yeah, I think Brumbies. Yep, Brumbies.
And here you go, Sam. I'm going to pick an Aussie team. Brumbies.
Here's your chance for redemption with Sam. The Hurricanes versus the Reds.
Oh, that's hard because I spoke up both of them. Hurricanes.
Hurricanes. I think their attack will be too much for the Reds. So Hurricanes at the capital.
Sorry, Sam. Blues at home against the Drua.
Blues.
Blues.
And Force versus the Chiefs. Will the Chiefs get back up?
Chiefs will get back up after a hard last 20 minutes.
He said don't talk about his Force.
Sorry, Sam.
This is tough.
We can't deliver for you this
really
week,
pushed
Sam.
us into a corner here.
Thank you for joining us anyway, Sam. Thank you to all of you for joining us on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod once again. Please tune in to our channels at Aotearoa Rugby Pod Official. That's across YouTube, across our socials. Of course, you can get us as an audio pod. You can get us on stuff.co.nz and on Rugby Pass as well. We can get the full podcast. You can get cut downs. You can also get written stories. So plenty of places to catch us. And we will catch you again next week. Mā te wā.